let's talk to Dave, pronouns he, him, who says, I wanted to make a comment about the idea of hell existing while a loving God exists. I don't think those two are compatible. So let's see what Dave has to say. Dave, you are on AXB with Forrest and John. How are you doing today?
Hi there.
Hey.
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
Never had a bad day, man.
Doing good.
Awesome. So this is the first time I've called into a show like this, so I'm not quite certain how this works, but yeah. Where
I can walk you through it if you like.
You guys start? Or?
So basically, like, you can expect us to talk quite a bit because the audience is here to listen to what the atheists say to what you're saying. So forgive us for that. We're going to try to guide the conversation insofar as like keeping it on track, but we will do our best not to control and dominate it. We will be as pleasant as you are. So as long as you're not interrupting, insulting, and like that, we'll try to avoid that as well, unless we get real fired up. We will be respectful of you as much as you allow us to be. We will not be respectful of your God. And a great place for you to start is by telling us what God you believe in.
Sure. I believe in the Christian God. So I am a Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that God sent his son to the earth for him to die for our sins, for mankind.
Okay.
And likewise, in transitioning into the main topic, Jesus was a very loving person, and he reflected the qualities of the Father perfectly. Therefore, it makes no sense that hell fire should exist, aka the idea that souls are burned eternally in hell. I saw, the whole reason I'm calling this is I saw a reel that you guys had on someone posted on Instagram where the man you were basically arguing that they were incompatible, and I agreed with you actually, because they aren't. So through the study of the scriptures that I have done, essentially, I have drawn the conclusion that while hell may exist, or the technical definition of it, hellfire, or the fact that souls are thrown into it eternally, does not. Basically, I do not believe that the soul... Oh,
no, you're fine. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to ask you some follow-up questions, but go ahead and finish what you're saying first.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So from what I'm understanding, you believe in the Christian God, you believe in Jesus. You say that Jesus was a loving person and was reflecting of the God of the Bible. And you say that hellfire doesn't exist because that is not a loving condition. And so when the Bible talks about wailing and gnashing of teeth and all those things, you're assuming that has a different interpretation or different meaning. So my follow-up question would be to understand that a little bit better. Do you believe that the Bible is literally true or figuratively true and it needs to be interpreted?
Well, it's both. Certain parts need to be interpreted and certain parts are literal. So, for instance, there are stories that are literal that did happen. So, for instance, David and Goliath, I believe that actually happened, that was a historical event. Yet the rich man and Lazarus story, I believe, was a parable and was symbolic and should be interpreted symbolically.
Well, okay. Can I ask, do you think the Lazarus of the Gospel of John is a real thing?
Okay, so, well, there's two Lazaruses. The Lazarus that was Jesus' friend that he raised from the dead after 4 days. I do believe that was a historical event, but the story of rich man and Lazarus, of the weeping and the gnashing of the teeth, and seeing, from hell looking up into heaven, that is a parable that should be interpreted symbolically.
Okay. What about one last question from me before I jump in is, do you believe that the God character, the caricature presented of God throughout the entire Bible, Old and New Testament, including Jesus, because I'm assuming you're talking about like Trinitarianism type thing, right? That Jesus is God. Is that right?
Actually, personally, the word Trinity is not in the Bible.
Okay, cool. So then I can separate them. That's fine. So same question then, but I'll separate them out. Do you believe that the character of God in the Old and New Testaments and the character of Jesus in the New Testament, do you believe that the way that the Bible presents these characters is an accurate depiction of who they really are? Or do you think that, like, the things that God says in the Bible, the things that God does in the Bible, the things that Jesus says and does, that some of those are also parables or poetry to be interpreted?
So it's sounding like the same thing, which is it has to be taken in context, right? Certain things did happen and certain things did not. But regardless,
can you give me an example of a commandment or action of God, not Jesus, a commandment or action that God takes in the Bible or gives in the Bible that is not to be taken literally, that is actually to be interpreted?
There's several. Once again, you would have to give me like a specific instance, and then I could tell you whether or not I believe it should be interpreted literally or symbolically.
I got a great one. Sorry. I got a great one, Dave. Just as like a test here. Do you know Numbers 31?
You can specify.
Well, I mean, okay, so Numbers 31 is where God orders Moses to go and utterly destroy all of the Midianites. When he doesn't utterly destroy all the Midianites, but he saves like the young women, all the women and children and everything like that. Moses gets mad on behalf of God, and then he commands them to go back in and kill all of the women who have known a man, as well as all the children, all the little boy children, and all the men and everybody in the city, except for all of the virgin girls, so that they can take them as plunder. And then later on in Numbers 31, it actually specifies what they were supposed to do with those virgin girls, and that's that they were supposed to be forced into marriages to Israelites. But one out of every 500 of these little girls was to be sacrificed as a burnt offering to God. So now in Numbers 31, is that something that needs to be interpreted, or is that something that literally happened as a matter of history, like God handed down those commands?
Okay, so I do believe that, you're going to have to specify one point of that. There's one point of that that I think needs to be clarified. I do not recall any instance of God requiring a human sacrifice. That does not.
Hold on. You don't think you can't think of any one instance in which? Sorry.
Yeah. Hold on. Sorry about that. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Obviously. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. That was wildly. Yeah. Okay. Jesus. Obviously. Okay. Sorry.
Jesus, and also like Jephthah's daughter, for example. Jephthah's daughter is another one. Jephthah is I believe, is a general, and he prays to God and says, "If you let me win this battle, I will sacrifice the first thing that comes to my home." He goes home; it's his daughter, and he sacrifices her to God. Right. God knew that was going to happen.
Okay, but hold on. So Jephthah's daughter was not sacrificed. She did not give her life. No,
she did.
Sense. She
she did.
No.
Oh my God! Hold on.
You're saying that Jephthah's daughter was killed? Let me
find the verse.
Hold on. Jephthah's daughter was sacrificed, yes, but she served her days in the temple. She was sacrificed in the way that she was not able to basically get married. She was dedicated to the temple. She was not killed. She was not.
No. Oh my God, this is so wrong.
Expecting.
I'm finding it. Hold on, because I've heard this before, and I just want to find it really quickly.
She
all right, can I read it? Can I read it? So, sorry, this is Judges. This is Judges 11. right? If you turn in your Bible, Judges 11, if you go all the way down to verse 31, this is part of Jephthah's promise to God. Whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's. And let me just shout this so that everybody can hear, and I only have to say it once. And I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering.
And then in 38, 39, she goes up into the mountains to cry about how she's never going to have sex. And then in 39, after 2 months of crying about the fact that she's going to die a virgin, she comes down and it says, as she returned to her father, who did with her according to his vow that he had vowed. So in the beginning of the chapter, Jephthah says, I will sacrifice as burnt offering whatever comes out of my house. And then at the end of the chapter, he says he does what he swore he would do to his daughter. So none of that says that she lived out her life in the temple.
Okay. So I will need to, because this is the first I've ever heard of that interpretation. I will.
That's what it says in the book, yo.
We're not interpreting it. We're literally using our eyes to read the words on the page.
Okay. And so, and I will grant that I definitely need to do more research on that, because I was not expecting this.
Hold on. Sorry, Dave. I need to ask Forrest something. Forrest.
However,
hold on, Dave. I need to ask Forrest something. Forrest. Hey. If I were to tell you to sacrifice a small child as a burnt offering to God, do you think that you need to interpret that, or like you need to figure out a way to get around it?
If you came to me and told me to sacrifice a child for any reason, I would call first a cab and then the police.
Yeah, so there's no need to interpret anything about it.
So I need to, okay, so first off, I just want to say that we're getting a bit off topic. The original topic that I had started off was that of hellfire, right? And so I understand that the reasoning that has led up to this point so far was, I believe, that you guys were trying to essentially say that there are many acts of wrath that God exacts upon his children. And therefore...
that's not really what we're going for.
To go to...
Sorry, that's not really what we're going for, because here's the thing, man, is that like when you said that, I took notes of what you said. You said that hellfire doesn't mean literal hellfire. When they talk about fire, brimstone, gnashing of teeth, wailing, all the whatever it is that the Bible says. I remember wailing and gnashing of teeth. I don't remember. I think lake of fire is in there as well. You believe these are metaphorical terms because that does not comport with your idea of an eternally loving God. I get that. I wrote it down. Quite frankly, it doesn't, I'm not interested in hashing it out too much, because there are over 40,000 denominations of Christianity. We talked to all of them on this show. You said you saw a clip of us on Instagram talking about this. I think I know what clip that was, because there was one that went very viral. The thing is, that guy that we were talking to was a Christian who did believe that there was literal actual fire and brimstone and hellfire and a lake of fire and literal conscious torture and all these things. He did believe that. And I have talked to other Christians on this show who believe that it is just a separation from God. And I've talked to other Christians on this show who believe that it's annihilation. And I've talked to other Christians on the show who believe that it is painful and suffering, but it's just for a minute. It's just a little tiny bit of it. And it's not. I've talked to, and at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything. What I'm more interested in is, okay, cool, you believe that. I'm more interested in what you're talking here about how the Bible needs to be interpreted sometimes, because the God of the Bible is a monster, Dave. Front to back, the Bible is a pro-slavery book. The Bible is pro-genocide. The Bible is pro-misogyny. The Bible is pro-rape. The Bible is an awful text with an awful God who says and does awful things. And so I'm curious if this is the stance you're taking, that you don't believe in hell because it violates this concept of love, and that all these things need to be interpreted. I want to figure out what you actually mean by these interpretations, where you're actually drawing these lines, and on what authority you're drawing those lines. That's more interesting to me by a lot. Because at the end of the day, if you just say, I don't believe hell's this, okay, You're in version 39,864 of Christianity. Neat. That doesn't tell me much.
Fair enough. I mean, ultimately, what it comes down to is that I believe that the Bible is, when self-contained, true to itself, that there are no contradictions. And I know that you guys you guys probably have a huge list for trying to take me down.
Because we've read the damn thing.
And so have I. But let me answer.
Well, hold on. Have you? Because you've never heard of Jephthah's daughter.
Well, I mean, that is a footnote, but you say there's no contradictions. What do you think about the resurrection? Arguably the most important part of the whole Bible, the point of the story, right? The resurrection, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John each tell different versions of this story that are incompatible with one another. So right there, what do you think about that? How is it not a contradiction when you have 4 gospels telling totally different stories of the most important part of the book?
Okay, the resurrection of Jesus?
Jesus, yes.
Which resurrection are you talking about? Because there's multiple ones. Oh, okay, I see.
The one from the tomb. He was put in the tomb, and then after 3 days, he was raised from the dead.
Right.
That story has 4 different versions, a different one in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So if the Bible has no contradictions, what about the contradictions, though?
I believe that all of those events took place as they are described, but they may have been taking place at different times.
Okay. If I can ask,
basically,
if I can ask one particular contradiction
happened, but
well, Dave, I've got one particular contradiction. Like a question to ask you is see if you can give me a definite answer based on your knowledge of the Gospels and the resurrection story contained in all 4 Gospels. How many angels were at the tomb when the women got there?
It's off the top of my memory, but I believe it was 2.
Well, that's one answer. Yeah, that's one answer. There's either 2, none, or 1. It's either 2, none, or 1.
In Matthew, it's 1. In Mark and Luke, it's none. And in John, it's 2. So if you're saying these things happened at different times, then how many times did Mary go to the tomb and see these different angels and be surprised each time? Like what's going on with that?
That's an excellent specific situation that, I need to do more research on.
Yeah, so, I would also ask, like, how did the tomb cover become opened? Because there even on that detail, there's multiple different correct answers. Matthew says that the tomb was closed when Mary got there, and then there was a great earthquake, and then an angel appeared, rolled the tomb away, and rolled the stone away, and sat on top of it. Mark, Luke, and John all say that the tomb was already open when she got there, and that's why she ran inside, freaking out, wanting to see what had happened. That's very different. Also, when it comes to whether or not Jesus is actually there, in Matthew, when the angel opens a tomb, Mary runs in, Jesus isn't there, and the angel says, yeah, he's already gone. In Mark and Luke, the tomb is already open, and also Jesus is already gone. But in John, he appears, he shows up, and he's like, yo, I haven't ascended yet, but don't touch me. And then he fucks off after that. So like, that's not even the beginning, man. There's a ton of contradictions between those stories. And that's the end of the Bible. The very beginning of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2 are also completely different stories that tell different events happening in different orders, but that cannot possibly overlap. So like what you have here is a book that, again, it cover to cover, this book is pro-slavery. This book is pro-genocide. This book is pro-misogyny, pro-rape. It is not a good book. It has a couple of good lessons in there, but so does The Lord of the Rings, you know? And it's full of contradictions. It's full of plot holes. It's full of folklore and things that you don't accept today. It looks exactly as you would expect it to look if it were just a collection of stories put together by humans with a political agenda.
It looks nothing like what you would expect it to look if it was the inspired word of the most intelligent being in the universe. So what it sounds to me, Dave, is that when you say that certain parts are literal, those are the parts you like. And when you say that certain parts need to be interpreted, those are the parts that you either don't like or don't know about. And you just have this story, this preferred version of Christianity that appeals to you, that doesn't work for 39,999 other kinds of Christians out there, but it's enough to make you feel like you're going to go to heaven, so you don't really care. Does that sound like a fair summary, or do you think I'm missing something?
Well, a few specific, for the most part, I think you're right, but on the smaller portions, like, there's a few key differences. First off, I never said that Jephthah's daughter was to be interpreted symbolically. I do believe that story happened. I simply said I needed some time to look into it. Regarding the Gospels, I'm saying a similar thing. Thing is that you guys, you are extremely intelligent. You have done a ton of research. And I really appreciate, and I can appreciate the effort that you guys have gone through, right? And so you have this list, of contradictions, and I get it, right? The thing is that I think that with enough study, that admittedly I need to do more of, and I know that it probably sounds weak, because I'm saying this and I don't have the answers for you right now, right here, for every single contradiction that you guys have. But, there's a lot of things that require additional study. So what I am saying is that, I need some time to take these things that you guys have said, because you guys are very well aware, I'm sure, that oftentimes we don't talk to people, Christians don't talk to people that are as studious as you guys, right?
But so as atheists tend to be. So here's the thing, Dave, is that I didn't have a prepared list here. Like I do have some notes. Like when I'm reading, I'm just looking through my Bible, right? And my Bible is full of highlights and notes in the margins and all sorts of stuff. And literally, like that part that we just went over, like the different gospel accounts of the resurrection, I literally drew a table on the page showing like these different things did this happen, and just comparing the things that I read. So like my notebook is the book that you believe is true. And it sounds like you're saying, well, I need more time to think about this. I don't think you do. I think you can start right now by just asking yourself, do you have a good reason to believe this God exists in the first place? That I think that's a great place to start, because if your reason for believing is the Bible, you don't have a good reason to believe.
The Bible is one of the reasons that I believe.
Okay, what's another one?
There is more.
What's another one? What's the best reason you believe? What's the biggest one?
I would say, I would say that it leads to the best life that one can live. Because
Christianity does?
If someone is actually, well, yes, because in the Bible, and admittedly, there are many things in the Old Testament that you guys have clearly, have issues with, the, misogyny and the, like
slavery,
those things. I understand that.
Sexual slavery, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
They were. Right. So I hear what you guys are saying there, right? What I am also saying is that the principles that are found in the Bible on how to treat your fellow man, mostly in the New Testament, are timeless. And one of
if they're timeless, Dave, if they're timeless, where in the New Testament does it disapprove of slavery? Like where does it say that God doesn't like slavery and that slavery shouldn't be a thing that exists?
So the definitions of slavery the definition
you don't want to do that
that's used in the Bible.
You don't want to do that.
I believe.
Dave.
What do you mean?
You don't want to go down the definitions, because that is something that I think we can agree there's no good slavery, right?
no good slavery.
Yeah.
No good slavery.
Can we agree on that?
What was going on in the Old Testament was.
Oh man.
Well, yeah. Okay. You know what?
just to cut, like, Dave, I'm not trying to be an asshole to you. I'm really not. But like, just to cut you off here and just save everybody some time, right? The Bible is very clear in Exodus and Leviticus that there are different rules for Hebrew slaves and non-Hebrew slaves. If they take a Hebrew slave, then they're supposed to let them go after 7 years, and it's more of an indentured servitude sort of thing. Except if they come into slavery married, then they're able to go out married as well. But if a man is enslaved and you give him a wife and they have children, his wife and children remain your slaves forever. And if he wants to stay with them, he must also agree to remain your slave forever. That's just for Hebrew slaves. For non-Hebrew slaves, where it specifically says take slaves from the heathen among you, including the resident aliens and all these things, what for those people, they are just slaves forever. It specifically tells you how hard you're allowed to beat them. It specifically says that they are your property to pass down to your children, that they have no freedom. Like, it is trying to pull the bullshit apologetics thing of saying, well, it was different slavery. I promise it is not, and it's not going to work out for you. So just, can we agree that there's no good slave? There is no kind of slavery that is a pleasant or good or moral thing. And we just start with that, and that way we don't have to go down this whole thing. Like, we can cite the verses to you, dude, but I don't think you want it either.
Agreed.
Okay, so that's what John's question was. Is there ever a point in the Bible where God, even Jesus, says, hey, y'all, don't own people? Does that ever happen?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember.
It's because there isn't one. There's not. There's plenty of things about slaves obeying their masters, and that they might get a portion of their peace in heaven if they're Christian masters, but that's about it. There are some things that some apologists like to point to, like where people say, like, you know, you should be kind to your bondsmen and be kind to your slaves. They're still fucking slaves, and that's not good enough for me. And you're saying that these are timeless moral lessons. There are a couple, like, you know, love your neighbor, but literally every religion has that. And also every philosophy that isn't a religion, like Confucianism, has, you know, treat everybody how you want to be treated. And damn near every moral view in the world has come up with that one. So, like, there's nothing special about the Bible that separates it from other religions, other doctrines, other ideologies, secular ideologies even. There's nothing good in the Bible or in Christianity that you can't get without the baggage of this evil God and his evil teachings, which, again, don't look anything like a divinely inspired text full of wisdom, but do look exactly like a bunch of shit that a bunch of Palestinian goat herders wrote down 2,000 years ago to help control their society. That's what it looks like, and that's what it is.
I can see your perspective a lot clearer. I appreciate it. Like,
yeah.
If I'm being completely honest, part of the reason why I wanted to call into this show was because I really wanted to see what kind of, you know, basically what you guys thought about these types of things. I really wanted to understand, like, these things, and you're absolutely right.
I love that. That is the point of this show, and I really genuinely appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you?
I do more research, and I freely admit that.
Yeah, no, and I hope you call back. I hope you call back, especially when I'm on. I'm sure John would say the same. I've enjoyed this conversation thoroughly because you're very honest about what you're saying. I will ask you one more question, then we got to wrap up. But really quick, last question. You said that Christianity provides the best life, or something along those lines. I don't want to be straw manning you here, but you said something along the lines that Christianity is the best life.
Yeah.
How does that work out for women and LGBT people?
Those are definitely hot button topics for sure. But
yeah,
I would
historically
say,
not great in terms of like Christian populations.
Historically not great. No, I agree. Yeah. Historically not great. I believe that the interpretations of most with the Bible and how women should be treated has been grossly twisted. Similarly with LGBTQ and them, like the core lesson of Christianity is to love thy neighbor. And so it really is a thing of, even if you don't agree with someone, even if you don't think that what they're doing is good. And then I'm speaking specifically on the LGBT side of this.
We can all agree that being a woman is not good.
Right? Oh, that's
stop it, women.
1000%.
Yeah. Stop it, women.
And so
stop being
on the mistreating of. Well, yeah. So like on the treatment of women's side, the Bible is extremely clear that true men care for their wives and treat them with love and respect. Now, it does state that men should be the leader of the family, the head of the family. And that is a position that has been twisted, where instead of a head and a leader, they decide that means that they can be a despot and a king. And that is wrong. And that is a great tragedy that it is attributed to Christianity when there are abusive husbands.
And that right there, I think that's where we're going to leave it. I think that's where we're going to leave it because it is the end of the show. But I want to tell you, that is yet another area that I would encourage you to do more research in what the Bible actually says. Because what the Bible actually says about women and what it actually says about wives and where you can get them and how you can treat them certainly doesn't say that a true good man would be respectful. It's very, very much not that. So I think that's the next thing you should look into. And I think that you should call us back sometime. John and I also host other shows all over the internet. If you want to find us wherever, would love to talk to you some more. But yeah, I don't think your God is real, Dave. And if he is, he's an asshole. And I want to talk to you about it more whenever you have the time.